Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of the new EMEA Partner Channel Podcast, the voice of the EMEA channel. I'm Palmer Foster. I'm the account director for EMEA for Allbound here. And joining me today for our second episode is Max Büscher, who's the manager of integrations partners at Shopware. Max, thanks for joining us. Welcome to the podcast. Just a little background on yourself. I know you're based in Germany and you've got a very fascinating story, and I'm super excited to get into this. Had the privilege of kind of getting to know you previously, and your story alone is a very unique one. Especially how you ended up at Shopware is so fantastic. But I know you've been there for over 6 years. You've developed your career with them. It's been very fascinating. So I'm really looking forward to digging into that. And right now you're responsible for the partner managers. So I guess before we really dig into the nitty gritty, it'd just be great to kind of have that high level overview of what you've been doing and maybe share with the audience of kind of how you ended up at Shopware, exactly that story, because I think it's so fantastic of how you decided on them.
First of all, thanks for having me here. It's super excited. Actually, my first podcast. So if I sound a little bit nervous, it's about that. I think I would start with the basics. I'm 27 years old. As you already told the listeners, I live in Germany and I work for a German company called Shopware, who is developing an e-commerce platform serving the mid-market. And how I ended up there is in Germany, you went through a general apprenticeship program, is it, I think, where you can learn a specific job. For me, it was the job of a salesman in school and part-time in a company. And I did that for the average 3 years. After that, I wanted to continue the job, but in a company that was more tech focused. And I knew from my time at school, someone who already started at Shopware. And while chatting with him, I found out that they are looking for salespeople, and he might have helped me to get into the room to get the interview. But from there on, I figured out that it was quite a good fit, and they were crazy enough to hire me. Just after this apprenticeship I did for 3 years, just learning the job of a salesman. Back then, the company was maybe 120 people. Now it's 450. So there was tremendous growth in the almost 6 years I've spent there. And when I started, the sales department was organized in a way where everyone did a little bit of everything. And Shopware was mainly focused on the German market. While for some listeners, Shopware is completely new or they haven't heard about it before. For others, it's a well-known brand because it already exists for 20 years, but 80% of that time, they only focused on the German market. And just recently, the last 2 to 3 years, they're focused on other territories in Europe and since last year also on the US. So for some, it sounds familiar, for others not. But what I wanted to say back then, only focusing on the German market, I quickly picked up the job of just answering questions coming in from partners and customers that haven't had a dedicated person they could talk to. And while doing that, I could learn a lot about e-commerce, which I had no knowledge at all before. And when the company developed, there was the opportunity to have a dedicated set of partners to manage in the UK. And I just went to my former manager and said, yeah, I would like to do it. And again, they were crazy enough to give me that task. So I could really, throughout my career, learn on the job. So I managed partners in UK for almost 2 years. That was, I think, between 2018 and 2020. And I spent every month, maybe two or three times, each time a week in either London or Manchester to be with the partners and set up the UK market with an incredible team. We were 3 full-time employees back then. And that brought a lot of challenges. We will dive deeper, I think, later on. But beginning of 2020 or mid of 2020, when obviously the pandemic hit, a lot of partners had issues and I had more time. And the team that focused on business outside of the DACH area in the sales department at Shopware over the years grew bigger and bigger. So I had the team was always asking for a team lead because there was from an organizational point of view, a director responsible for a bigger area that couldn't really focus on the specific needs of the team, which obviously wasn't his task. So the team was asking for a team lead. And again, I was just bluntly asking, I would like to do it to the director. And somehow, again, they were crazy enough to say, yeah, sure, you can do it without any experience in leading a team. So you see throughout the time at Shopware, they give a lot of trust in people that are there. And if you prove that you basically earned the pre-approved trust, they reinforce it. So I could lead a small team. I think it was 6 to 8 people focusing on the business outside of DACH. And it was still, everyone did a little bit of everything. So there was no split between one person only focused on partner relationships and one person only focused on relationships with customers. So then at, I think, the end of 2021, so I was 1 year in the role of leading a team, Shopware completely reorganized its sales team to fit more the needs of our international growth. So from then on, we had 4 teams that were all completely international, and every team had a dedicated mission. So one team for customer acquisition, one team for like after sales services, and 2 teams focusing on the different partnerships we have. One is partnerships with agencies or system integrators that use our e-commerce platform to develop a new online shop for a merchant. And the other partnership side, which is, as we call it, technology partners or alliance partners that integrate with our platform to offer their service to our merchants. One example is obviously payment service providers or shipment providers. And I was appointed to the manager for the agencies or system integrators, or as we call them, integration partners. And from there on, I led a completely international team only focusing on partnerships. That brought a lot of different challenges with it because we had to redo all our processes. We developed a completely new partner program. We needed to get software for that in place. At the time, the company also implemented a new CRM system for the entire sales department. And because that wasn't already enough in 1 year, we also completely changed the pricing structure of the entire product. And that was just the past year. So this is maybe a bit longer overview of my just 6 years of work experience. So yeah, I'm happy to talk about all the details. And because it's only 6 years, if any listener has a different opinion on what I'm going to say or what I already said, or even disagrees, I'm happy to have a chat. Just reach out via LinkedIn, and I'm always learning. And I think listening to different opinions always help.
And I think just knowing your story, you're such an open person, open to opportunity and learning. It's been the catalyst for your career of just asking that question or putting your hand up to say, hey, I want to go do this. And quite often that's what you see in partnerships, is somebody just making that move into a role where they have no idea what they're about to face, and being sent to deal with UK partnerships. I know, and it's quite fitting because our first guest, Shane Forrester from reviews.io, is an Australian that lives in Germany. And he, his take on the differences between the UK partnerships and the DACH region partnerships, and to now hear it from your side, it's always interesting. But one thing I may have confused is because you were telling us about how when you started at Shopware, was it Shopware that you would drive by and you thought the head office was very cool looking, or is that where you did your apprenticeship at?
Mm-hmm. I did the apprenticeship in my hometown, which is where Shopware is not located. It's a very small town. No one will recall the name if I tell you the name, but it's close to the Dutch border in Germany. And if we have to go, or if we want to go to the next bigger city meaning more than maybe 30,000 people living there, we always had to drive by a very fancy office in an even smaller town than the town I'm from, and it always looked way out of place. So I obviously looked up what it is, and it was Shopware, because the founders of Shopware are 2 brothers who founded it with 16 and 15 years old. And they always wanted to stay in their hometown, which is called Schöppingen. If someone might Google it, they would see that maybe 3,000 people live there. It's the countryside in Germany. the middle of nowhere, which some might say.
I just love that that's how you found Shopware. It's just driving by it saying, oh, I like the look of this office. And now here you are, just having climbed the ranks. I think that's so fascinating. But obviously, you know, that recap is fantastic. And that's just high level. Having everything you've done and gone through. I mean, when you first started, you mentioned you were kind of answering questions for clients and partners. I mean, at that point, was Shopware really engaging with partnership programs? I mean, obviously they must have if you're answering questions for partners, but was it developed out, or did you have the chance to kind of come in and figure things out and maybe lay some of the foundation work for that?
Yeah, great question. I might jump in timelines a little bit, but when I joined Shopware, there was already a partner program in place for this integration partners or agencies that use the platform to implement an online shop. There were 3 levels, and the differentiation was more in the service they would get from Shopware. If they would be in the middle tier or the highest tier, at least the highest tier had a dedicated partner manager. The middle tier, it would depend on the success of partners, which back then for Shopware meant just license sales. And the lowest tier, obviously, we try to acquire as much partners as possible back then to get more market share in Germany or to get the name Shopware out there, which was already done before I joined. So Shopware was already a household name in the mid-market for e-commerce platforms in Germany. And I think the partner program as it existed when I joined in 2017 was already in place for 4 or 5 years. So there were some smaller iterations, but they never really revamped the whole thing. And that's where I want to jump the timeline to last year, because when we had the big restructure in sales, we had the opportunity to rethink everything and to set up the organization that it works on a European scale, on a global scale. So our team, when it was formed in end of 2021, got the immediate task to develop a new partner program that hasn't been really touched in a major way for almost 10 years at Shopware. So it was a huge task. And there I was lucky to have a great mentor who is also directly responsible for myself and the team at Shopware and both partnerships teams that I already mentioned, who already been through that at another e-commerce platform and could give me some insights on what worked well there. But we also wanted to make sure that what makes Shopware a great platform to work with, especially in the partner management area, should be represented in the new program as well. And that we can put this program on or roll it out on a global scale. And that was really the task that we could give to the team, because what really valued at Shopware is the influence of the team. It's not that some managers, directors, VPs, what have you, come up with an idea, then give it to the teams and they need to execute. It's really, these are our ideas and let's workshop around what you want to implement. And what made Shopware great in the past, I said I'm there for almost 6 years, but there are people that are there for 10 years or even longer, and they know it even better than myself. So we highly used that. And a happy coincidence was that Shopware got, I think it was beginning of 22 that they announced their first funding, and within the due diligence process of that, obviously people that invested money did an outside-in analysis also of the partner management, which gave me a lot of valuable insights on what partners like. Obviously, we could have asked them, but if you ask as Shopware, maybe the feedback is different as if someone else would ask. So that also helped a lot in redesigning the partner program.
What was the biggest takeaway of that, I guess, analysis exercise?
Yeah, understanding that if you join a new market, back then when Shopware entered the DACH market, it was really important to get the name Shopware out there. So we tried to acquire every partner there is. And back then, Shopware served not really the mid-market, a little bit smaller merchants, if you can say that. So our partner network really reflected that. from the maybe 800 partners we had in the old partner program, the majority were in the smallest level. And obviously for 800 partners, you cannot give a dedicated partner manager to everyone. So we had to differentiate and focus on partners that are really committed and that can go the next step with the company towards the mid-market. When we changed versions from Shopware 5 to Shopware 6 within 2020, the platform was already dedicated to the mid-market, but the partner network had to step up. So we looked at obviously certain KPIs. One that always counted at Shopware was license turnover, but we knew that we couldn't only measure partner success by license turnover. So also things like engagement from partners via marketing activities, or just because they delivered us a certain amount of deals that they might have not won, but they were crucial in getting the name Shopware out there and getting us at the table with the merchant. That should also be rewarded. And we took these measures and applied it to the partners we already had and looked at data we already had in our old CRM system and figured out how much partners can make the step towards the mid-market. And that was, I think, the main exercise to figure out from this 800 partners, there might be 200 partners that can really do the next step in the mid-market. And then it was getting the ideas from the team together, roughly put it together in a new partner program, now having 4 tiers, but that doesn't really matter, and present that to, from our perspective, the partners that fit best our mid-market approach and get their feedback in before rolling it out to the partners and say, hey, that's it, you need to live with it. So I took on the task with the partner managers to present it in a very short amount of time, I think 3 to 4 weeks, to 40 or 50 of the top partners, which was a lot of time giving the same presentation, but it was really necessary and the feedback was super valuable. And I think with that, we could incorporate some changes that really helped in the end make the partners happy with the new program, which I hope we did. I'm not 100% sure that we did it for everyone. Some feedback we obviously already got, and we are always open for more feedback from partners if some Shopware partners would be among the listeners. But I think after the first year of implementing it, or almost the first year, we see a lot of success coming from partners, and they really saw that that we all need to pick up the pace to serve the mid-market. And we see it in our KPIs, which is obviously license turnover, but also marketing activities and merchants reaching out.
Yeah, and with that kind of exercise, I mean, it's so fascinating because Shopware's had this partner program for a while now, and it was really kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like it was kind of V1 of that partner program for the longest of times. And then a year ago, it's okay, we now need to really look at what we have. We need to move up the market. And that's a natural progression for any channel program. So it's really interesting to hear that. And as you go through kind of what I would call your ICP process, understanding what your ideal partner profile, or IPP, excuse me, your ideal partner profile looks like. It'd be interesting to hear, because I know you started working with partners in Britain before that. How helpful would that have been when identifying partners and then understanding the differences? Because you go through this complete understanding of what you have in your partner program, so you're really aware. But having that before you go to a completely different territory, I don't want to overstep the mark, but the DACH region is fairly similar to the German region, obviously, with Germany being the biggest player in that. But going from there to like Britain or France is a completely different transition. So I'd be curious to understand, were there things that you drew out of this exercise that you guys just were not aware of? Or were they things that made sense because you had already started going out of the DACH region prior to that exercise?
Yeah, Shopware was, I think, in a pretty unique situation. At least if I talk to people that have more experience in the sector and worked at other platforms, they told me it's unique. It is that Shopware existed for almost 20 years and was a household name in the DACH market, as I already said. And if I joined, or when I joined the UK team, and I've spoken to partners and visited expos for the first time, it was the complete opposite. It's like no one ever heard the word Shopware and that it exists and that it's an e-commerce platform. So in Germany, we were the top player in the mid-market versus in almost every other country in Europe that we were focusing on that at that time, we were not non-existing. So that was, I think, a crazy task. And we tried to approach the UK market at that time with one director that had experience in the UK and that worked in the UK, and that helped us to acquire the first partners. But at some point, there was a change, and it was only like German people working on the UK market. And what I learned is it doesn't matter how good your English is, and people will also hear my German accent, but you will never get like the last 10% that you would have as a native that's born in the territory, that knows everything. And obviously that can bring the network, which is key. So we changed the approach at some point when we addressed new territories. So when we address a new territory like Italy, for example, we always start with the partners because their Shopware is not known, and the competition is already known. I mean, we can throw a lot of money into marketing to make people aware of the brand, but that does not give immediate trust. So the trust comes in via the partner network. So we would make a local hire in Italy, a partner manager that has contact to partners that can learn the platform Shopware or learn to pitch the platform Shopware. And I think it's quote unquote easier to explain the value of the platform Shopware to the agency that get it, that it really serves the mid-market, that it's an open source platform that's still out there, which is rare, that has different opportunities to be distributed, whether it's on-prem, self-hosted, in a SaaS environment or in a PaaS environment. And if the agency gets that value and they have the brand recognition in the market, they can show it to their merchant whenever it fits. So if a merchant wants to see something new or something that, especially merchants that want to be among first movers. And if we get the first project, we usually call it lighthouse project. I think that's a term within the industry. We use that to go out with marketing. So to put the agency front and center, say they did a great job. And by the way, it's on Shopware, and more merchants will see it. And more importantly, more agencies will see it and then hopefully get back to us and also want to offer that to the merchant.
Yeah. And you mentioned something that I'm curious about. You mentioned having a partner manager that's in that territory as well. And obviously we use partners and channel to expand into new geographies because we don't understand the cultural nuances or that language barrier. And, that's why channel is so brilliant. However, there's the approach of either, you might have your partner managers based in Germany and they work with the partners in Italy, or the model you guys have approached is, okay, we have a partner manager that's also in Italy that speaks the language. Do you think there's a massive difference in either approach? Or because obviously having somebody that can speak the language that can work with the partners is ideal, but at the same time, partners normally are a bit more receptive to this kind of global network or working beyond borders. I'm curious what your kind of opinion of that is.
In my humble 6 years experience, it differentiates from market to market. So territories like the Benelux, or especially the Netherlands or the Nordics as a territory, what I feel is like they are more open to new technologies or adopting new things earlier, like in general, but especially in software. So if something new and fancy comes around, at least the partners are eager to try it out, rather than you need to have a big track record of merchants in that country, in that territory, to at least get on the table with an agency. So that's what I experienced when trying to acquire a partner in the UK. The market is very saturated because every vendor from the US, what is their first step? Obviously the UK, because it's the same language. So that's one thing, but also you need to have a big track record of merchants. And you can in some sense buy your way in there to have salespeople, local salespeople that try to acquire potential leads, give it to the agents and give it to the agencies. but we wanted to take the partner approach. So that was what worked quite well in the Netherlands and the Nordics, where they want to adopt new technologies faster, partners and merchants, versus other territories where you need to have a track record, or territories and countries that need to have local, or where you need to have local language capabilities. The example that pops up in Europe, I think most often, is France, because you need to have a French-speaking sales team to be able to really crack that market. And from what I've heard from colleagues and friends outside of Germany, it is kind of the same for Germany, that you really need someone to understand the culture and to speak the language, because Germans tend to want to buy from German vendors. So you need to at least, quote unquote, look German. And security is a big topic, always, with everything. And Germans are, from my perspective, very the opposite from the Dutch and the Nordics. We are not very quick in adopting new technologies in general. So that's why the past 2 years with the pandemic gave a big push, but still not everyone in Germany uses credit cards, for example, or does mobile payments in general in stores, which is just one very basic example.
And what's been, if you could sum it up, and I know this is a difficult kind of question, what's been like the biggest primary challenge when approaching different countries within Europe or even the UK?
The biggest challenge for us was more or less find the right person that really believes in the Shopware story to give 110% when going to their partners and believing in the technology, in the business opportunity behind it. And that took the majority of first half of 2022, really find that or find these people, because we almost doubled in size in partner management. And the biggest growth was obviously the team that focuses on European markets Shopware is active in outside of the DACH region. So finding people that believe in Shopware and that don't have on like their agenda to be here for like 1 year or 2 years and then move to the next. They really want to build up something there. And especially approaching them as a company, as a platform that's maybe not that known in the market. We need to find the right people that are interested in this challenge. And then it's figuring out the needs of the market, because if we approach a new market like Italy, they have different payment service providers, they have different shipment providers, and making them get a like default integration into Shopware, which is a given if you want to win any merchant, is pretty difficult, because we cannot say we have dozens or hundreds or thousands of merchants in Italy. So the shipment provider, the local one, maybe doesn't see the business case right now. So Shopware would need to make the investment, or we find the first merchant together with a partner and then it's a co-investment. But it's always difficult to find that first customer, because if they compare Shopware to any other platform that's locally already available, and the integration to payment providers, shipment providers, whatever have you, or whatever is given in the market is basically for free in the store of the vendor, and they compare to Shopware and it's not, and it's custom development, it already adds costs, and you cannot discount the license cost of Shopware in a way that you could make up for it, even if you would give it out for free. I mean, the agency would need to implement it.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on with that. So, and that just reflects the time and analysis you've been able to do on all this. I mean, again, you jokingly say you're humbled 6-year career, but I mean, what you've been able to experience and develop is just nothing short of amazing. I mean, to consider what you kind of went into and just kind of kept putting your hand up saying, hey, let me go do this, and to be able to sit there and kind of rattle off these types of analysis is something, I know there are a lot of people on channel that wish they could have such a pinpointed pressure marker that they could put their thumb on. And so I appreciate you've had mentors along the way, and you've also had the opportunity to just kind of, figure stuff out on your own, which that's the reality that most of us go through, whether it's in channel or any kind of new position. But kind of the curveball question to you, And as the series goes on, it won't be such a curveball because everyone will figure out what's coming. But if you could give that one piece of advice to somebody just starting out, what would it be for them?
For me, with the story I told at Shopware, in some points it was being in the right spot at the right time, but also do not shy away from an opportunity, especially when I knew there was the availability, or Shopware was searching for someone doing partnerships in UK together with the team. I was thinking, do I have enough experience, or is it the right thing? Or I don't know anything about managing a dedicated set of partners, and doing something completely new and changing everything you do every day at work is always difficult and hard to overcome. But at some points you just need to put up your hand and say, hey, I want to do it. And then you figure it out along the way. I mean, obviously the first few weeks, a month were pretty hard, and learning everything was definitely an experience for every of these steps along the way. But for me, it's just doing it, and I will figure out the rest. And if I'm not good enough, people will tell me. At Shopware, it's a very open culture. So if I have questions, I can approach almost everyone with my questions. And I can also very openly ask, is this the right thing, or am I good enough? Do I perform in the way where I should perform? And if someone says no, that's great, because then I ask for what could I do better. And usually they give great advice in what I can do. And always, I think for me, besides work, I was always interested in the broader tech industry and in e-commerce. And later on, when I was about to get a chance to lead a team, I was also super interested in everything around the big topic, new work, and how to lead a modern and remote team. So I consumed a lot of non-fiction literature. I'm not big in reading books, so that's why I just listen to summaries via a certain service. But if I really like the summary, I then read the full book. But I could learn a lot of things out of that, because I didn't go to university for any of that. So in some ways, I need to get the general knowledge. And for me, I was maybe lucky that I'm personally interested in these things, and that makes me dive deeper into everything I can get even more. And what really, really helped me is having regular exchanges with people at Shopware or other companies that are in a similar position, and learning from them. What would they tell me what to avoid, or what were their biggest mistakes? So I can learn from that. And that really helped me and keep that going. So at Shopware, we have so-called leadership exchanges on site, I think twice a year now. So everyone is in one room, and they do a good job in mixing different groups up, and you get to know the people. And for me, the optimal outcome out of that is that I have an additional regular call with someone I met there, I haven't met before, to figure out what are their challenges. Because when leading a team, you tend to speaking to team leads that lead also sales teams, but listening to team leads that lead development teams or any other teams, there's always one or two things that they do that's like the regular thing to do in leading a development team that you could apply for a sales team, or that you could at least try out. So just exchanging with people with different experience, and always asking for things that you could do better. And I think an open culture like the one at Shopware, or the one that I experienced at Shopware, really helped there.
That and I think having a cool head office probably is a good starting point too. But no, that's fantastic, Max. I really appreciate that. And so the final question for you, and this is actually not from myself, it's from our first podcast guest, Shane Forster from reviews.io. So you'll get to ask our next guest a question, but it's within the channel kind of ideology. So simply, quality versus quantity, excuse me. So quality versus quantity.
At Shopware, we tried different approaches. So first, everything on quantity to get the name out there. But now if we strategically approach a new market, and we have our ideal customer profile, and we know it's the mid-market, and it's this specific customer in the mid-market, It's definitely, for me at least, quality, because we need to find the right partners that can really serve this specific customer, which is not every customer out there. So we need to get a really quality network of partners. And especially when approaching new markets and you go for quantity, you have a set of then maybe instantly 50 or 100 partners in, let's say, again, Italy, and you cannot keep up with serving them with leads or deals, because obviously we expect that partners bring in leads, we bring in leads, but it should be an equal share. And if you just go for quantity and you have hundreds of partners and you cannot really serve that market, it makes the network, or it frustrates the network, because the promises we made, we cannot hold them. So really starting with a handful of quality partners and doing everything to deliver or make them deliver their first successful project on our platform is key. And then other partners will see their success and the business opportunity they had with Shopware or whatever else they have. And then new partners will be acquired almost automatically, or we at least have some success stories we can share with the market. That's how I would interpret the question, but I don't know if that's a good answer.
No, it's a good one, because there's no wrong answer. So now the fun part. What is your question for our next guest? And it doesn't have to be within channel. It can be anything. The whole idea is just kind of get them thinking outside of the box.
Yeah. So I have a very, I would say, loaded question. So stick with me. Looking back at especially 2020 and 2021, where the pandemic forced all of us to approach our job very differently, at least I think the majority of us. What is the one thing you learned during that time you still apply today that you haven't had figured out if the circumstances wouldn't have put you in this position, which could be everything from working from home, working remotely, maybe for the first time for the team, talking to partners, customers, merchants, anything you figured out there that you wouldn't have figured out otherwise, that you still use today, and that it's maybe a positive change that this very unfortunate times brought to your working life.
I like that. That's a good one. Well, Max, I can't thank you enough. Thank you to our guest, Max, who manages the integration partners at Shopware, for joining us. Thank you to our listeners for joining us for the second episode of the EMEA Partner Channel Podcast. And finally, a shout out to the people behind the scenes making this all possible. So Chloe, our head of marketing for EMEA, and then Rachel, who handles all the editing in-house at Allbound. But we hope you've enjoyed this, and feel free to subscribe to wherever you find your podcast materials, whether that's Spotify or Apple. Until then, take care. Bye.